Hello, everyone, and welcome to Into the Black Archive.
It is me, James, and him, Owen, speaking from not so sunny Glasgow on Saturday night, immediately after the final 60th anniversary special, The Giggle. Owen,
Yes.
was that a giggle? Did you laugh? Did you cry?
This episode really was just a complete rollercoaster of emotions. In some scenes, you were giggling. In other scenes, you were hiding behind your sofa,
Yes.
starting to feel very uncomfortable. There was such differences of flipping backwards and forwards.
Now, I feel like before we even remotely start to get into this episode, this is your spoiler warning.
And he's just talking about there just for TARDIS having wheelchair access. So
Which is
there we go.
massive, by the way. And, I mean, not very Dalek-proof, but I think if the pros outweighs the cons on this one, wheelchair accessibility is good.
Right, shall we start off with where we start off in this episode?
In 1925.
We start off in 1925 as we go get Dookie Bill, the first thing ever televised, from a strange toy master's shop.
Yes, a toy master who is strangely German,
Or is he?
but also American at one point.
The accent kind of flips, doesn't it? Just to give it a little bit of a manufactured feel to it.
To be honest, it's not that the episode ever really goes into why said toy maker is accent. There's something on Unleashed sort of implies it's because we want to show that he's racist, which I think is stunning.
But there is one element of the toy maker being racist, which is a little bit more overt. It only really happens in this intro scene. When he kind of remarks to the person buying Dookie Bill, I used to warmer climates. Do we really need to be making a character racist just to show how evil he is?
Yeah, it's a weird one, isn't it? I mean, if you've watched Unleashed, which we managed to watch before we started this recording, there's a bit where it's sort of said that Russell didn't want the supposedly racist part of the toy maker character to be forgotten, and so they decided to add some of it in. I think it's one of those things where you really didn't have to justify that.
No, like he could have just left it, and
You really could have just left that.
and even the accents, really, they could have just been like, as I say, it's just a way to show which the toy maker is manufactured. He's fake. There's something unsettling about him being there.
Yes.
But then we decided to add in this element of race into it for some reason.
Yeah, I mean, but yeah, he speaks in a bunch of accents, mainly a German one, but flips around, and it seems that his main mode is very British.
Yeah, it is a British, which is odd here because he is actually American. We've got an American film star.
We do. Well, film and television and stage.
Yes.
Star. Multi-platform, multifaceted, multi-talented, multi-named Neil Patrick Harris.
Was he a worthwhile star for us to have?
God, yes.
He definitely brings complexity to this character, doesn't he? He hits it off perfectly. I mean, I think in the Leafs they even have a joke saying, "Which are you sure you're not just the toy maker? Because you can juggle, you can be funny, you can dance." She denies this claim.
I mean, he clearly can. I mean, we'll definitely get onto the spicy scene in a bit. But I think what makes Neil Patrick Harris so good for this is because, weirdly, usually when sometimes you watch a movie and there's a really recognisable actor in it and they're playing a character, but it doesn't really matter. Like Ryan Reynolds plays Ryan Reynolds all the time. With the way Neil Patrick Harris is and the way his persona is, I actually think that adds to the toy maker generally because he's such a theatrical, larger than everything character that he should be, just absolutely over the top.
Do you think having Disney involved will now bring in more American superstars?
I hope so, but not at the expense of making a good show. I don't want it to just become stunt casting. Because I think when they initially announced that Neil Patrick Harris was doing it, there was a little thing in my head that went, okay, that's obviously a really famous name. So, it might just be they've got him for the name. But I think with this, it fits really well. So as long as it fits, I'm very, very happy for them to get anyone they can afford, which presumably is bigger people now.
Arguably, they've already done that. I mean, even going back into Chibnall's era, which I think everyone thinks is questionable, we had Stephen Fry, Lenny Henry.
Yeah.
We already had other big British names.
Bradley Walsh. No one gets bigger.
Of course, I mean, who can get bigger than being on TV every day doing a quiz show, which will get repeated until the end of time? You see, I hear that is one of a few things you could see in Wild Blue Yonder. Just an episode of The Chase just being transmitted out.
Imagine if the last thing at the edge of the universe was just The Chase on repeat. How existentially horrifying is that?
What is worse, the end of the universe, or it just being Bradley Walsh for Chase?
You know the countdown bit at the end of Wild Blue Yonder where they're racing down the corridor.
Yeah,
they've had to speed up the countdown. Imagine if it was just on the loudspeaker, Bradley Walsh going, "Well done, Doctor, you're 2 from home."
So pulling us somewhat back on course here a little bit, pulling us away from the ITV daytime schedule. Is it hinted here which Snooky Bill is the Guardians of Time and Space?
Right, so this is, we're skipping way along here to that line in the final confrontation where where the Toymaker says, "Well, I've taken on the Guardians of Time and Space and turned them into voodoo dolls."
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you could definitely read it that way.
Yeah.
I suppose that is cool if we're saying that the invention of television involved burning a Guardian of Time and Space to the ground.
Yeah. I mean, we're saying that it lent his laugh into every screen, not just every television, every screen.
It's every screen. But anyway, I mean that's definitely the opening covered, and we also get a quick introductory lesson to the start of television because we meet John Logie Baird.
So I think as we come back into present day from the introduction of Logie Baird and the creation of TV, I really like how in the opening shots, always lurking in the background is the Toymaker. In pretty much every shot, when the Doctor's having a confrontation with an angry man, he's just in the background dancing away, enjoying the chaos he's created.
I really like that whole scene. I mean, obviously we're coming straight out at the end of Wild Blue Yonder. We've had that plane crash over them, and Wilf is with them, obviously for the main reasons. Wilf isn't in these scenes. There's a stand-in. But we've got this sort of riot going on, and everyone's sort of gone feral and a bit insane, and order is completely breaking down. And in the midst of all that is the Toymaker, almost this perfect symbol of order, because he's dressed up, he's got the waistcoat on, his bow tie is immaculate, he's just dancing away, nothing can trouble him, whereas everyone else is obviously going insane.
Yeah. He's loving himself pretty much.
Those are the scenes they shot in Bristol, the ones that everyone was talking about at the start of when they started filming. Everyone was going on about these Bristol scenes. I think it's so good now that we can do those kinds of shoots and you can really show the chaos of it. I think one of the things that, much as sometimes I like the cheapness of Old Who, you do lose that bit of scale when you don't have the resource to achieve it. It's good that we have that resource now when we want to achieve something.
Mm-hmm. Now, there is something about this scene which did feel a little bit off to me. Does it make sense here for the angry man who wants to be hit by a car? I mean, obviously that sentence makes no sense at all.
Yes.
But does it make sense here for him to be able to monologue and have a massive explanation about what is currently going on?
No, not really, but I think Russell is doing what we call a writer's shortcut to get to the exposition of the plot. And of course...
That darn plot coming back again.
I mean, as a writer, I can tell you, the plot really is the most annoying thing, because you really do have to remember it all the time, because if you don't for 1 second, everyone else notices you forgot. Well, you have an hour and 1 minute of screen time in this, and there is an awful lot going on.
I mean, that was my main concern going into this. We were having a discussion about it as we were together, and I pretty much went, we know they've got this bit, 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 this bit. How the fuck do they have time for this?
This is about pacing, and this is about how you structure an episode, because I think almost less happens in The Star Beast, but that episode feels more rushed to me. This one does a lot more, and yes, maybe it does a lot more in a slightly more Cliff Notes way. I feel like a lot of the things that go on are kind of just dealt with in 2 lines.
I think this one here is helped by the fact which it is only 2 episodes. It is only one storyline. Whereas, as we've discussed before, the issue with Star Beast is that they've got too many things going on in one moment. So you very quickly just lose complete track of what's going on. Whereas this one here, because it is just one line, it's a lot easier for them to get into action with it.
Yes, it's kind of a fork where it's one line for most of it, and then right at the end it splits into 2.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. And then suddenly we have swarms of unit coming in.
Yeah, units show up, and we are shown to the Avengers Tower, which they've repurposed from Marvel.
I mean, if they're going to get anything from Disney, let's just get all the 3D assets, save some cost, reuse, recycle, reuse, whatever the other R is. Let's just do it.
So yeah, totally CGI skyscraper in London, but it does have a helipad shot in a car park in South Wales, which I think is beautiful.
There was some dialogue here, which I'm going to bring up. Kate says, we get Kate Stewart. Kate Stewart's introduced here. She goes up and hugs the Doctor. And
Thank God.
She lists off the things which she's fought. Did she ever fight the Yeti?
Well, I think that is clearly meant to be a reference to Alistair.
Yes.
Maybe that is just her going, Alistair. So, did they fight the Yeti? I mean,
they haven't on camera at least.
There's definitely going to be something expanded universe with it, but I think we can give it a pass. There's a lot of bits of this episode which are we kind of get these strings of references to old stories, and this is just one of those strings. It's one of those where we go, oh yeah, they remembered that story, and yeah, I don't think any more of it anyway.
But speaking of old references, of course, Mel's back.
Yes, straight away, really, because we'd seen, it hadn't really been confirmed, but we had seen Mel in the background of some of the shots, particularly in the unit base, so we'd sort of surmised that she was going to turn up, and we don't waste time. Mel just turns up. There's a hand out with some papers, some information. The Doctor takes it, and it is the hand of Melanie.
I like how naturally they just bring her back.
Yeah, she's with the unit now.
It's no... Oh, we found her up a mountain cliff on the edge of the sea. It's just, she now works for UNIT, which, to be honest, doesn't take a leap of faith to get that logic to get there, does it?
Yeah, I mean, it's not like Russell T Davies has ever not used the old companion now works for UNIT. I feel like that's going to be a lot of the heavy lifting of how we're going to bring older companions into newer stories is via unit and potentially in another series.
I mean, that does make sense, particularly now, which is either going to be that or the companion support group, which we see at the end of Power of the Daleks.
Yeah, I think it's going to be both. I think that will weave in as well.
It's a really nice natural way of doing it rather than, as I say, like what we had with Ace and Tegan, where it was just they're up backpacking a cliff somewhere.
Yeah, you can tell the difference between Chibnall style and Davies style, and I don't think that's even a criticism or a praise of either of them. It's just
this one here felt very natural. They didn't want to dedicate that time. It was just she's there.
They didn't have that bloody time.
No, they didn't.
Yeah. Anyway, we then get a scene in unit where we go through some of the exposition of what's happening. The world now believes it's right all the time. Every person with every opinion, which is absolutely not at all a political comment. And there's definitely a lot of satire that comes in this section. We even get our own Boris Johnson effigy show up for a second. And we also got, which I think is the most important cameo in this whole episode, ladies and gentlemen, Trinity Wells is back. Although I think she's basically on Fox News now.
So UNIT have this discussion about how they are avoiding it. They've got these rings on their arms, which basically protect them from the waves.
Yeah, do you remember what it's called?
Nope.
Neither do I.
I do remember, though, which they were made by the
Blinks.
Was there any point for him to be there?
That's surely just setting things in motion for other things. I think there's a lot of setting things up for other things in this episode. But anyway, we have this really interesting scene where Kate sort of turns hers off to showcase what the spike is doing mentally, and she has a big rant for a bit.
Does this indicate that's actually what she thinks?
See, this is what I thought.
Because, like, it makes you think which everything you believe is right.
Well, yeah, then she must believe it. She didn't just create those beliefs.
Yeah. Does it mean Kate is not a nice person?
I mean, when you'd be the head of the world's leading peacekeeping force against extraterrestrials, I think you're naturally inclined to be distrustful.
But even for Doctor, someone who she knows and trusts.
Oh yeah, he got crossfire. He got shot.
Yeah. There was one element which happened here though, which I do think is a little bit questionable and just pure plot convenience.
Mm.
So we find out which Mel, Donna, and Wilf aren't getting affected because of TARDIS travel. Now, this just feels like a little bit of a cop-out to me.
Yeah, it is.
Particularly because it's indicated it's for long-term time travel. Long-term traveling for TARDIS.
Yeah, but Wilf's only been in
that's what
2 or 3 times, yeah.
And every time it has been, it's just been 1 or 2, let's go to this place.
Yeah, Wilf never travelled in time.
No.
Wilf just went from place to place in London.
Yeah,
He just got a really good taxi.
I feel like a really fun way for this to be explained to us would have been, instead of Kate taking hers off, would have been to slowly see Donna disintegrate into it.
Yeah, I think that would have made sense.
It would have made more sense.
But on the flip side of this, I think, from Russell's perspective, I think he had to create the framing of the story so that, yes, everyone was going mad, but that he had mechanics to stop that having to affect every character, because that was going to bog the whole thing down.
Yeah.
But everything else they wanted to do. It is a bit of a cop-out, but again, it's like what I said earlier, it's a writer's shortcut.
Yeah.
It's, okay, I'll come up with a reason that seems credible enough, I won't mention it again, and we'll just move on.
Are you excusing bad writing here?
I think it serves a purpose. I don't think it serves it as well as something else could.
Yeah.
But I do think it serves a purpose in terms of, I just need a way of writing myself out of a corner, which sometimes you do need.
Mm-hmm. Once we get past the ring discussion, we notice which Russell T Davies is back to playing his same old game. We've been here before. He's encoding random things in just a few beat notes.
We've been there a few times.
We've had the dun 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 dun.
We had Archangel,
dun, dun,
which
dun,
actually
dun,
gets referenced.
Dun 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 dun. And now we've got the tonation of the laugh of the giggle.
Is Russell kind of doing a similar thing? I mean, there's definitely another thing that happens, a spicy thing, that is definitely a riff on another thing that happened in The Sound of Drums and Lost the Time Lords, where we get psychotic villain has danced to popular song.
Why not?
Because we can do that.
So moving on from what Russell T Davies likes to do, let's move on to what David Tennant enjoys. A good old angry monologue.
Yeah, which is actually, I mean, it's really good Tennant in terms of, like, he gets to go and do his angry sad boy doctor thing. I really like. I think with him doing it as 14, and there is enough of a distinction where it does feel like a different.
It feels this rant feels a lot more bitter than what we've had
it's
before.
got a lot more cynicism in it.
It's got so much edge.
Yeah, like I feel like there was sort of a thing in 10 where every time he sort of did that, you felt as if there was a front that was slightly slipping away.
Yeah.
To reveal the actual kind of darkness within, and obviously the Waters of Mars is like that completely going. Whereas with 14, I feel like it's much more on the surface and they're much more likely to flip.
Yeah, it almost felt slightly out of character because we haven't really seen 14 do this. It kind of just felt like we've done it. We're now evil ranty.
I mean, there's definitely a bit of subtext, and there's clearly a point being made. In the script, which is fine. But yeah, I don't think it feels out of character. I just think it feels like there's more of an edge on it, and I think that's down to we're depicting 14 as being more weary, which is, I think, a big theme of this episode is the weariness of the Doctor now.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's that sign of it coming across there.
And then we work out which we need to go to where for TV was initially invented and have a look around. Can I just say this is a continuation, the TARDIS landing here is a continuation of something which we've been seeing a lot in this series. such amazingly arty and cinematic shots of where the TARDIS lands.
Yes.
It has been constant. We had it in the first bit where he lands and then finds Donna, with it being in this end of this like alleyway. We once again have it at the end of an alleyway. Last time we had it when it's wedged into a wall.
Mm.
The TARDIS seems to just be attracted to really nice locations to land this time round. And it's quite nice.
We've got budget and we're using it. And we get these lovely on-location shots. The Doctor and Donna walk out. There's a little discussion about why 14 has never talked about Mel, or anyone else for that matter.
But it's a weird one, this one, because we sort of know the Doctor does discuss their companions.
Yeah, but it's never really something they bring up. It's always when it's sort of a forced conversation. That's always been the thing.
But when Donna previously knew the Doctor, when he was the 10th Doctor, the entire thing was built up around him randomly mentioning Rose.
Yeah, but I think the reason Rose kept getting mentioned was because when the Runaway Bride happened, that was in the immediate aftermath of the infamous Bad Wolf Bay scene, the most heartbreaking, unrequited love moment in the history of Who. And so it made sense, I think, at that point for him to reference that because it was literally minutes after. And so that was always baked in because, well, he'd mentioned her there. And then Martha, Donna met naturally. Sarah Jane, Donna met naturally. Mickey, Donna met naturally. And Mel never came.
Yeah. It does make sense because it does feel like something you'd talk about your immediately previous companion.
Yeah, and actually, thinking more about Runaway Bride, that was only because Rose's dungarees or the shirt was still there and Donna found it and were like, oh, you've obviously abducted someone else. So even then it was only because it was brought up and he had to explain that was because of that.
But it does, as I say, it does also make a good point in that you're likely to speak to your immediately prior companion. But when you think about the age of the Doctor, what he's been through since he travelled with Mel, he's had Time War, he's had Rose, he's had Donna, he's had loads of things happen. Flux, Timeless Children announcement,
there's a whole puppet show about it.
The Heaven Sent situation,
where he was alive for about a billion years. I mean, he does say it officially now that he's about a billion years old. So that's where we're at. I
like it now, which we're just giving up. We're just around a billion, somewhere in that ballpark.
And absolutely all of that billion was down to Stephen Moffat. So thanks, Stephen, for just completely destroying time.
And speaking of ballparks, we actually get a history lesson now on the Humble Ball.
The Humble Ball.
Humanity's first game.
And last game. Yes, delivered by the Toymaker, because the Toymaker's shop is right there and the Doctor and Donna have walked in. And it doesn't take long for the Doctor to recognise who he met again after, well, about a billion years.
And something which I do really appreciate about this scene is that when we kind of have a flash of showing you who the Toymaker used to be. And something which I really liked here is that they went to the effort of colorizing those scenes of the Toymaker.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking back to other times when we've had shots of the first and second Doctors, thinking sort of like the 50th anniversary when we've got the shots of their eyes to save Gallifrey. That's just black and white, or black and white with tinging over it to give it a bit more of a current feel. But it's never been recolorized, and it just adds a nice extra shade to that old footage here.
Well, it makes it feel more real, just because it's in those lovely shades of color. I think also it speaks to a change in tone about the classic series, because when Russell rebooted it the first time, the sort of going rule was that we can reference stuff that happened in the classic series, but we're not going to make too much of an effort mentioning it, and we're certainly not going to reference it that directly. We're actively using visuals.
Yeah,
that was something that never happened before. The fact we've got to a point where now we're saying, well, we're integrating the classics much more closely in a way that isn't shameful and is actually very celebratory, and it meant we got really nice restored coloured footage, which I don't think we'd ever seen before. So a treat for people who've been through the old Hartnell episodes, like us. You can listen to those on our Spotify page if you scroll down far enough.
But not the episode, sadly, of a Toymaker, as it is lost. But
Animation.
soon we're getting an animation which looks like it is going to be in the most dodgy animation style you could possibly ever seen. So stay tuned for when we take a look into that.
Yes, I appreciate that they're doing it, but God, it looks... it doesn't look great.
It might suit the story. Let's reserve judgment until we've got it in front of us.
The important thing is that we're getting it, and that's good.
Yes, exactly. So, once again, 2 episodes in a row, we end up within an endless corridor playing a game of hide and seek.
Yes, the Toymaker's realm. No one since broadcast has seen the Celestial Toymaker, which is where the Toymaker comes from. And the thing about that is that the Toymaker has his own realm. That's where he gets all of his power. And that realm doesn't correspond pretty much to any rules of logic or reason. It can just be anything. And once we enter it, we get to see that realm sort of enter full flow. And also Donna being just confused out of her mind as to what's going on.
So the Doctor here suggests which the Toymaker has come out of his realm because of salt. Now, I don't want to second guess the Doctor here, but I don't think that's right.
You don't think?
Well, we know which the entities from Wild
the
Blue
no things.
The no things come from also a different universe, a different realm, so to speak. So do you think the entire thing going up into Suchi's the first season of New Who is going to be working out why different entities seem to be coming to our plane, and it's going to end up being the baddie is creating holes?
Maybe. That's a good theory. It would be very, very similar to the cracks in time, I suppose. It was Moffat's first. There's a lot of setup in this episode about an even bigger cosmic being. There's a scene with the Toymaker where he goes, I played games with everyone in the universe except for one person who I ran away from, but I won't name for enigmatic story reasons.
The person who waited or something.
The one who waits. That was the line of dialogue. One who waits.
And there's also also just skipping back to a little bit to the end as we're now discussing this. We've also got scenes of someone coming along and picking up a gold tooth who's not really there, but is.
But it's like a hand. But also, how have they got there? So that must be some kind of cosmic thing. I saw on whatever Elon Musk is calling his app today, that might be Jinx Monsoon's character, because they've got a similar hand. Yeah. So that might be her being set up for next season.
And we've also as well got mentions of... We previously had mentions of Famip's boss.
Oh, yeah, the boss.
And we've also, in this one, had mention when the Toymaker was beaten of his legions.
Yes, I've never heard of the Toymaker's legions. I mean, look, there's obviously a lot of setting up for this new series. And I think there's a real testament that we've had the specials and they felt like their own thing. And that's been great as an overall thing. But that we've also been able to set things heavily in motion for what's coming. And I feel... It's, you know, the fact that we're even speculating about the new series this early out is great.
Yeah.
Like, it's a great thing for me to be speculating about a new series of Who and genuinely excited, because during the Chris Chibnall era, I couldn't really be genuinely, because I was always thinking it was going to disappoint me. Whereas with this, I actively feel hope that some episodes can be great, even if some of them maybe aren't.
So let's go back to the never-ending corridor of despair. Once we have the salt discussion, they separate off. Doctor and Donna, they're stuck behind separate doors. One, I blame the Doctor solely for this. He knows that door is going to shut quickly, but he still runs through it without
that is completely his fault.
It's
inconsiderate as well.
Yes, it's completely inconsiderate, and it's completely his fault.
He literally said, I don't know if I can save your life this time, and then left her behind a closed door.
Yeah, exactly. But in their 2 rooms, essentially, now they're separated, they both meet... fears, basically. It's like being back in the hotel with the Minotaur. There's different fears behind different doors.
Which I thought was really cool.
So when the Doctor goes into his room of fear, let's just call it rooms of fear, right? Let's just go there. Right. He finds the guy who brought Dookie Bill hanging up and wrapped in what looks like tissue paper. And we see the Doctor lifting him up, unwrapping him and finding which he is now also a puppet.
Well, the great way they do that is when he falls over, you get that sound of wood
Yeah,
actually, it's really, really
you
nice.
also just see him not being able to hold up his own weight. He just kind of collapses out from underneath him and just thuds.
It's a really creepy scene. And I think what I really like about this whole sequence, anyway, this is Donna's as well, this applies to, is the whole thing is like dark and messed up and twisted. And I like Doctor Who dark and messed up and twisted.
It feels like what Wobbly Yonder could have been if they went down for more fear aspect of. Generally, I was sat there like nervous, particularly with Donna's.
Yeah, Donna's really, really messed up.
Even before we get introduced for puppets, just that initial thing of hearing someone crying and Donna's just creeping and going, "I will kill you if you come out at me."
I mean, I think Wobbly Yonder achieves the same level of fear, but it's in a different way, because Wobbly Yonder's is all really psychological. I mean, there is the body horror aspect where you've got, oh, my arms are too... But this one is more driven by the visuals.
Yeah.
And it uses that, and it uses the lack of logic to mess with you. I think the Donna scene is actually much more effective. That is a messed up scene.
Yeah, no, that with the dolls all coming at her, the crying puppets saying which bill's been taken away.
Yeah, but they both come through those challenges, and then they reunite to watch puppetry.
There was one thing about their reuniting which did throw me off a little bit. Let's go into the thought process of these characters, all right, here. They've just been through Wild Blue Yonder, where you're never quite sure that person you're sat in front of is actually that person.
Yeah.
And they know which the toy maker, particularly the Doctor here, knows the toy maker will fuck with you.
Yeah, they could do that if they wanted, for sure.
And honestly, I thought we were going down that route, particularly when, as you say, we're going to a puppet show. The Doctor's face is so blank. It almost looks like someone who's fake and who's been made up for Donna.
Well, I think the expression the Doctor has when he realises what he's about to see is, oh, God. But also, in a sense, he knows he's pretty much defeated with the toy maker if he goes at him in any other way than the rules of those games. And even then, he can only control that to a certain amount. In this supposed, like, we're sort of in, like, active psychological combat where everything is illogical. He can't do anything.
Yeah.
He doesn't have, well, nobody that we've yet met in the Doctor Who universe have anything like that kind of reality melding power. So, yeah, he's scared.
Yeah, he's
like,
not
you
happy.
See Tennant really scared in this episode. On edge, knowing that he's coming up against something of which he has no defense, really.
Yeah. And that puppet show as well reminded me something. Made me realise something which I haven't really noticed. I know which Moffat doesn't like killing off his characters, but my God, did he go and kill off all of his characters?
Yes, but he also, did it with caveats, which when we hear all of those caveats again. The puppet show sort of goes over what Donna's missed. It's like a sort of recap through the Moffat and Chibnall eras.
Maybe we should have had this instead of a weird void talk.
Yeah, imagine if we'd flash forwarded to this at the start and then come back. That would have been really interesting.
Or not even flash forward to this scene in particular. We just have the toy maker sort of acting out with dolls.
Yeah, and then the toy maker's like, and now he must face a new challenge. It would have been cool.
Not even that. We just cut straight into the episode. Like we have him narrating it. We don't actually see him. Just doing it like that.
That would have been cool. It would have definitely been better than the... I think what makes the puppet show good is that it celebrates what we've had in the intervening period between the two Davies. But in a way, it almost does kind of gently poke fun at sort of the madness and the contrivance of it without being critical.
Yeah. Like we have the entire thing about how Clara is killed by a bird. And even the toy maker sat there going, what the fuck is going on? Why have you given me this to play with? Seriously, Doctor.
But she's frozen in the last second of consciousness.
I also liked how, going back to the accents and how it makes the toy maker feel very manufactured and very surface level. The changing to American accents when he just retorts back at the Doctor in this scene.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's really effective. I love the way that the dynamic of the scene plays. obviously the Doctor's kind of messed up. And the most impulsive thing that even happens in this whole episode is the Doctor basically challenges the Toymaker to a game to stop him explaining himself.
Yeah, like, there's no real point for him to...
He doesn't have to.
At this initial stage, there's no point for him to call a game.
He just wants him to stop talking.
Yeah.
And that's where the core of the Doctor's character is in this episode. Running away from himself all the time.
Is that running away from himself, or is it shame of Donna knowing what he's done in the meantime?
I think both, because I think he's running away from himself, and at the same time, if you're running away from yourself, you sure as hell don't want the people you meet along that run to find out yourself, if you're so ashamed of that.
Yeah.
You know, that I think that's something we can all attest to. If you've ever like moved somewhere new, or you've got a new job, and maybe you've made a few mistakes that you aren't proud of, you don't want people necessarily knowing all of your embarrassing stories day one.
Yeah.
Obviously, this is on a slightly more cosmic scale, but the root of it emotionally is the same.
Yeah, I suppose.
And so that decision is rooted in the emotion and the weariness of the Doctor, and it's just good that bits of plot are happening because of character now. Whereas I felt like with previous Who, it was the other way around.
That bloody plot is back again.
Yeah, but then we have second game. So it's the most basic game of all. It's cutting the deck.
Cutting the deck, so you need to get the highest card to win.
Yes.
Did the Doctor win?
Well, Doctor drew an 8, which is, for all of you card fans out there, is a reasonable card.
But to all of you number fans out there, you also know it's not that high.
No. The Toymaker drew a higher number, which is a K.
Which
card fans will know that stands for King.
But number fans will be calling bullshit.
Yeah, but how can we quantify that a K is higher than an 8?
Doesn't it go like you go to 9 and then?
Are we talking about cards here?
Yeah.
Right, so it goes, so it's ace. Well, aces can be high, which they actually do play that rule. But then it's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, Jack, Queen, King.
Yes. So King here naturally wins. But of course, we know here that the Toymaker didn't cheat because that's his one rule, is that he will follow the rules.
Yes, the game, he will be honest.
Yeah.
So the Toymaker fairly wins, cutting the deck, and that means that in theory, he can banish the Doctor wherever he wants, as he has won the game. But
it is rule of 3, which, without setting it up as that, feels like such a cop-out.
No, I think it's funny in a way that it just kind of, because like, that works. I know it's I know it's cheap, but it's funny as hell. It's really good when he just goes, nope, we are bound by the inviolable rule. Best of 3.
So let's take that to 2023, and we skip back into the future.
Yes. We get back then to 2023 for the final game. And when the Doctor gets back to unit with Donna, everything is all about, right, well, if the Toymaker's here, we need to find him.
Well, first, we need to destroy that satellite, and then we need to find him.
Oh, yes, that's with the galvanic beam.
Comes in.
Which is, of course, ends up being rather important as we go.
But speaking of things which turn out to be important, what is the point of this satellite?
So, destroying the satellite, I think, was their initial theory of, well, if we take down the network, then the sound won't be completely connected, and so it will, in theory, fade.
I feel like what we needed there would have been Trinity Worlds coming back and showing the worlds going to normal. So I think that would have shown some level of impact of us destroying that satellite.
Yeah, but actually, that doesn't happen.
Yeah, but we're kind of just left on the edge here where we don't really have any expression of it not working, but we also don't get any expression of it working.
It is kind of a missing point. I think, because how I read it is that, well, they thought that destroying the satellite might work, and what ended up happening was that it didn't.
Yeah.
But it doesn't really get mentioned completely concretely. I took the reading that it was that, and obviously later down the line we see what really solves it. But yeah, for now I just sort of took that as read that, okay, well, that's not worked because it's still a threat.
Yes, and they are trying to find that threat, so we once again go down an alleyway of something which does not pay off at all. They get Donna to start writing a code to try and find the toy maker, which once again does nothing.
Well, that's because they never got to use that code because he's here.
It's here for a good old song and dance. Let's
Now,
go.
The Spice Girls.
Yep.
Having Neil Patrick Harris do a song and dance routine to spice up your life is hands down the campest this show has ever been. And I, for one, loved it.
I love it in any show where a pop number combines with a moment of high drama. We've had it before in like Sound of the Drums, The Last of the Time Lords, and we've also had it with Power of a Doctor with Rasputin.
Yes.
I don't know why I'm a sucker for this.
I think, do you know what's weird? I think the Rasputin one from last year comes across as less earned in a weird way. And this is not a criticism of the scene because I like the scene, but it feels a bit more random for the Master to do it. And you're saying, no, the Master did it. It's not like he hasn't. But it felt sort of more out of the blue, that one. Yeah. Whereas for the Toymaker, it felt bang in line with the character.
This is exactly what you'd expect him to do. They do. He just wants to fuck with you, and he's doing it.
And this scene is good for all manner of reasons. Number one, taste soundtrack. Number two, the most absolutely horrific death I've seen on Who in years.
The
balls. Holy shit!
I also love how...
And then Bingham picks one of them up and the faces in it screaming. That is horrifying.
I also like how the Doctor's telling Unit, stop what you're doing. They took his to command to destroy a satellite as like a word from God. But here he's there going, don't do this. I know this guy. But they just go, fuck it, let's shoot him with flowers.
Well, Unit always falls into... That's always been the joke about Unit, is they always fall back into just shoot it.
Yes.
Of course, the bullets turn into flowers. I mean, it's absolutely the most outrageous power imbalance I think we've ever seen in a Doctor Who fight sequence.
It's a good thing which the Toymaker just likes to fuck with you, because if he felt like it, he could just destroy everyone and everything in that scene.
Yes, but he's only after... I mean, if he was after bloodshed, then, oh, good God, we would be done. But chaos, way more fun.
Of course.
And that scene is complete and utter chaos. It's just like... You're watching that, and I thought to myself, is there another show that is brave enough and daring enough to do that kind of scene with that sort of madness?
And is Doctor Who the only show which is willing to have a final boss battle be Catch?
Now that... we'll get to that. But there's... I mean, look, this is the most unique show on television. The reason we talk about it into a microphone. It is a special show. And this episode is a special episode of a special show. It's so much happens that's cool, particularly this scene. This is one of the big highlights. And, you know, if you're just getting into it, stay, please, because it's a wonderful show. There are certainly episodes that aren't as good as others, but the best ones are the best things.
So let's move on to that ending scene now.
Yeah, so we get out to the helipad again, where our Toymaker has taken control of the gun and pushed some lowly Unit employees to their deaths with a thud.
And then it's time for game number 3.
Yes. Of course, now the rules of the game, which weren't expressly stated by the Doctor, but the Toymaker took them as...
I feel like both the Doctor and the Toymaker are just making up rules as they go.
Yeah, and they're just sort of going, all right, we'll go with that.
Yeah, it's not worth the argument. We're just going to do this.
So the Doctor deployed best of 3, and it was super effective. The Toymaker deployed a galvanic ray. And that was really effective because that's killed 14. And we're now in a regeneration scene. Halfway through the episode, we're in a regeneration scene.
Or has it?
Now, what happens when the Doctor regenerates?
Well, nothing really initially.
Nothing initially. So he asks Donna and Mel to pull a bit.
I mean, completely normal reaction, really, when you get shot by a massive laser which can shoot a pebble off the moon.
Time Lord, it's fine.
Yeah, that's fine. What else are you expecting, really, other than some bi-generation energy, maybe some generation energy?
After a bit of pulling, the regeneration kicks in, and my God, did we not expect this?
I mean, I think a lot of Doctor Who fans did because it was very heavily leaked. But I'm happy with how they did it.
Yeah, obviously it was leaked that there would be 2 Doctors at one point.
Yeah.
But we never, I think, found it leaked as to why.
Yeah. I feel like the reason why was a cop-out. But I'm all right with it because if he didn't regenerate here, I still see the story going the same way.
Yeah, I do as well.
I don't feel like it was some sort of like magic button of let's just solve it this way. Because let's be honest, Ncuti Gatwa could have regenerated, have Ncuti Gatwa, and once again just play a game of catch with the toy maker.
Yeah, and that would have been fine.
Yeah.
Now, bi-generation. Bi-generation's new. We're going to have to get used to talking about this because I do feel like this is one of the most radical things that has ever happened on this show. And I do think there's going to be a lot of people who like this, but I also think there's going to be a lot of people who really don't.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's going to be polarizing. I, for one, am fine with it.
Yeah.
I don't know whether I love it because I don't know why I don't love it, but because I suppose what you said, you can sort of take cop out in that.
I feel like if this is the last time we hear about it, I'm fine. Because at that point, we've essentially just treated it like a normal regeneration. If it's constantly referred back to, and we just use this as an excuse to bring back David Tennant whenever the wind blows, it might get a little bit tedious.
I think the mechanic in and of itself, it is really clever. It's sort of a really obvious thing that we've just never thought of in a way. Because, well, yeah, if they can regenerate themselves, suppose you can do that. There's nothing in the rules that says that can't happen, I guess.
So once we have the bi-generation, we have the massive, let's just call it a boss fight. A boss fight with Catch.
We do, but before we talk about Catch, we need to talk about Ncuti Gatwa. How good is Ncuti Gatwa from the first second? I'm going to love him doing this. I just already know that I'm going to enjoy that. He just seems completely carefree and full of life and full of energy, and I think exactly what a new audience needs. Yeah. Then they end up playing Catch.
Yes.
That's our introduction to them both. And yeah.
There's not much really to say of them.
They win Catch.
They play Catch, they win. And then we have a scene where the Doctor has, well, we're going to have to start clarifying this. We have a scene where 14th has a bit of a breakdown, which I think then brings us on to quite an interesting question about 15th Doctor and his ethics. Because the Doctor's basically, 14th's upset because he couldn't save people, whether it be unit people or people down south, downstairs. But 15 then says, you can't save everyone. Is this going to be an interesting turn of ethics with the Doctor?
I think that's maybe like, that's a really literal reading of it. I think when I watched it, I thought that was sort of, the Doctor was saying what the Doctor needed to hit. I think that was just Doctor help, giving the Doctor a helping hand, working him through some stuff, rather than sort of his actual views on saving things. But hey, it might be. That would be interesting if he's ethically a bit grey.
And then we have a scene with them going off into TARDIS for TARDIS duplicates. I think it's a worse excuse than for bi-generation, to be honest with you. But we also get another peek of the character here where we duplicate for TARDISes.
You're talking about jukebox, aren't you?
No. The fact which 15 tries to run away.
Yes.
Are we going... I mean, it's not exactly a new characteristic for the Doctor here. The Doctor famously doesn't like saying goodbye.
Yes. And he's kind of forced into it. I think this is... I think the bi-generation helps with kind of justifying this point. But I think that what we're seeing was there became a very clear delineation between 14, very weary, tired, done it all, versus 15. It was as if the 15 has shed all of that onto the other Doctor, and that's almost like a completely green Doctor that hasn't. I mean, they've got the memory, but I don't think they feel the weight of the experiences. I think that's all gone to 14. It might even be something that comes up, but that's what I felt watching it, was that this was like a completely new Doctor running away again for a completely new set of things.
And on the topic of differences, this Doctor likes salutes.
Really like that little salute bit at the end, because that's like the official, we're passing the baton over. And I think that's... Yeah. I know there was a lot of contention when people saw, that we were going to call Ncuti's first season 1, but I think By Generation is the reason for that, and I think it actually creates a really clear reason to say, actually, this is a totally new show, because it's a new Doctor, really. So Ncuti Gatwa was going to be shooting off for more adventures, but that, because of By Generation, leaves a leftover Doctor.
Yeah, he's running off now on adventures with the Noble family, going off to New York and other planets, apparently. I feel like this is where my issue with bi-generational stuff comes up, as I've already said.
Yeah, it's the implications of it.
This means if we bring back Rose, like I think a lot of us thought we were going to, we kind of have to bring in the Doctor Tennant somehow, and we know which Mel is coming back. Does that mean which Tennant comes back again? I don't know.
Yeah, I think it would feel weird if Mel came back now and Tennant didn't, because we've kind of set that all up. Like, if there is this unit spin-off, which there's a lot of talk there will be, we've got Donna set up now with that. We've got Mel set up for that. We've got Kate set up for that. And I've heard, you know that Colonel Ibrahim bit right at the start? Apparently he's quite heavy in the news.
Yeah.
So that was a setup, and there's a lot of setting up. But
yeah, it feels like they've potentially shot themselves in the foot a little bit.
Maybe, unless Tennant's just said, you can literally bring me back whenever you want, which he probably did. But we can talk about that later. The important thing is, I think, yes, it's schmaltzy, but God, is this... Like, if there's ever been an earned ending that's like that, having, effectively Tennant's Doctors and Donna happy, just living a normal life. And, Tennant says it himself, I've never been so happy in my life. It was like we actually got to see Doctor Who have an ending. Mm-hmm. I don't think we've ever seen that. I know it's not an ending because we've got another Doctor shooting off and doing that.
We've got New Who.
But that actually felt like an ending. Mm-hmm. And it had the emotional catharsis of an ending. And obviously, and if you've watched Doctor Who for a long time, like I have, and been through all the trauma of those series, God, it feels wonderful to see that. And, as much as I try to be objective, as a fan, I was a bit in tears. I think it was really, really a wonderful way to end, maybe not end Tennant on Who. I reckon he's back, but a good place to leave him.
And now let's look forward to this for season 1 of New Who. Does the Christmas look good?
I would say it does. We saw a little trailer of it, obviously, after the transmission on BBC One. Looks like a lot of fun. Yeah. I think the energy of it's very, very different to what we've had before. It seems like two young people. They meet in a club, and they just seem to be like mates.
We've got the Doctor dancing in a club. Now, is there a reason for this, I wonder, or not? We'll have to wait until Christmas.
I just really think this is going to be a completely different Doctor to what we've seen before. Very, far less buttoned up. Like
very
a little
blasé.
A little bit wilder and just, like really leaning into like the sexy aspect. Like I know that Tennant kind of did at 10 because David Tennant is David Tennant. But this is like leaning there.
Yeah.
And it's going to be kind of hot and it's going to be attractive and alluring. I think it looks really exciting. From the tone we got of the preview, that looks like a very interesting direction to go down, and I like it.
So you'll be able to catch all of our thoughts on the Church on Ruby Road, the Christmas special. They are back, but not on Christmas for us because, quite frankly, we want to spend some time with our family. So
yes, we're going to watch it, but we will probably record it a little bit after.
It will be coming out on New Year's Day, because Doctor Who might have stopped doing Christmas specials. New Year's Day specials,
of course.
But we are. So on Christmas Day, you'll be able to listen to us catch up we're continuing for Black Archive tradition of going back through some of the Christmas episodes.
Yes, and I think we've got Voyage of the Damned coming up.
The introduction of Wilf.
Yes, and, of course, the appearance of Padam Kylie Minogue herself.
So I hope you can join us for all of those little things we've just teased. But for now, we have to bring this episode to an end. Now, James.
I do think it's a really, really good episode. I think it's cathartic. I think it obviously sets everything up for the future. I do think there's some things I'm not a big fan of. The catch thing feels a little bit anticlimactic. That's one of the criticisms I would have, but I don't think it's too bad. And there's a bit of rushing and a bit of shortcutting, and some things feel like we're kind of glossing without getting to the surface, which I think was a Star Beast problem, but it's not as bad here.
Yeah.
I'm going to give it, I'll give it a 9, and that's the emotion maybe talking, but I mean, by generation, all of that mental stuff, I think I've got to give it a 9.
I'm going to give it an 8, which I think is less than I gave Wild Blue Yonder, just because...
I think Wild Blue Yonder is a better episode in terms of like objective.
I think Wild Blue Yonder, everything comes together nicer than this, where in this one here, we do have things which kind of don't really go anywhere. I mean, like, even the laugh doesn't really particularly go that far.
No, not massively.
So I just feel like I identified more with Wild Blue Yonder, but this is still an amazing episode.
Yeah, that's fair. I think the best way to summarize it is that's a better episode objectively, whereas for me, The Giggle is better emotionally.
Yeah. So thank you very much for listening, and I hope you'll come back and join us on Christmas Day for our journey down memory lane with some historic Doctor Who Christmas episodes.
The Titanic in space.
You can follow us on pretty much most of the social networking sites. We've gone whatever Elon Musk is calling his vanity project nowadays. We've on Instagram as Black Archive Pod, and also you can email us blackarchivepod@gmail.com.
It's Black Archive Pod on X, formerly Twitter, as well. And you can subscribe to us wherever you are listening to this now. We're available on all the podcast platforms. So if you like what you're hearing, why don't you drop a like, leave a review, and just do anything really to help us. Everything does. And if you want to listen to any of our classic episodes, they are available. Just scroll down your feed now and you'll find some of them. Enjoy.